you for watching Taxpayer Alert. I'm Al Segala. I'll be your moderator, and I'm president of the Calaveras County Taxpayers Association. We're so fortunate. We always have interesting guests, but I think we might have outdone ourselves this time. We have Steve Baird, who is one of the leaders in a movement, the Jefferson State movement of the 51st state. And there was a meeting last night in San Andreas. There were over 150 people, and he was the speaker, and it was just fantastic. I learned so much. Steve, welcome.
Thank you,
to our program, and tell us a little bit how you got involved in this thing.
Well, it's actually my wife. She found it online. She said, "Hey, have you ever heard of this Jefferson thing?" And being kind of a historian, I said, "Ooh, Thomas Jefferson, what's this about?" No, it was actually about the 51st state of Jefferson. And so we started doing research into it, and it was very interesting. There was a group that was in the way northern counties of California, and they were actually publicizing it, and it actually had 2 counties produce declarations and petitions. And so we said we had to go to one of these things. So we went up to Red Bluff, went to our first meeting, and we went to one of the leaders there, and they said, "Hey, this is great. How can we get involved?" And he goes, "How involved do you want to be?" And we said, "Very." And it was a 4-letter word, because we've been integral ever since. So we've really had a great time in this last year and a half.
Well, that's great. The key reason for this is what? Why? When I mention this, they say, "No way they're going to split up California." And I thought that too, but I've changed my mind after learning the facts. Why would somebody want to do this?
It all comes down to one word: representation. We lost it in a court case back in 1964. So what California has today is a situation where we have 6 representatives, 3 senators and 3 assembly, that cover the northern third of California. The bottom 2/3 of California has 114 legislators. So anything that comes up in legislation, we cannot protect ourselves because we just don't have the representation. Prior to 1964, we did have the representation. We had nearly 1 senator per county, and we lost that. So this Reynolds case overturned that and turned the Senate into a voting situation that was by population, just like the Assembly. So now we have a rubber stamp, and of course, in today's environment, we basically have a monoparty.
Right.
And so with that, it's all gone downhill.
It's interesting. Our founding fathers really didn't want to set up a democracy. They want to set up a constitutional republic where one house was based on area by the states, and the other house was by population, which is democracy. What happened in California, we might as well not have a Senate and an Assembly because there's no difference. It's all population.
It's true, and it didn't happen to California only. That 1964 case affected 37 other states as well, and so it turned the entire country into one large democracy. Article 4, Section 4 of our U.S. Constitution guarantees us a Republican form of government where the majority cannot overrule the minority. And so we've lost that, and this is an attempt to get this back.
I see. Now, there's been some success in what you're doing, and which is probably the most important thing. What's the use of doing something if it can't be successful?
Right. There have been 220 legitimate attempts to try to split the state of California, and I believe this one has gone the furthest. Right now, we had targeted 20 counties, pretty much El Dorado County, and draw a straight line to the ocean. Those are the 20 counties we originally tried to target. Of them, we already have 11 declarations and petitions, and we're looking at 2 more counties. Plumas County is going to vote in June, and Shasta County is on their way. They're about 3/4 of the way through a signature drive. But I do want to explain a little bit to your audience about what a declaration and petition is. A declaration says these are the things that have been happening in California that we don't agree with, and in some cases we can't even control. And then the petition says we would very much like to leave California and govern ourselves. But the key to the declaration and petition is that it creates standing for us. And so if we go to the legislature or if we go to Congress to try to get our brand new state, And if they refuse us, that creates harm, the second piece of a court case. And then we can look at a brand new remedy to Reynolds versus Sims, where we can either get our representation one of two ways. We either have a senator per county in the state of California, or they allow us to split and create the state of Jefferson.
So if we had a senator through each county, it would be back to a Republican form of government. That means such things as the fire fee, the phony fire fee.
Funny, you call it a fee, we call it a tax for what it is. But it was interesting. It was actually the brainchild of a Los Angeles assemblyman. And it went through both houses and signed by the governor. So for that assemblyman who brought it up, none of his constituents pay for this. Now, for us in the North counties, a majority of us pay for this. And so it was kind of like what I call a test balloon, and it really did prove that California has an environment where we can be taxed without representation.
Now, the new Jefferson State, or whatever it's going to be called, will have a Republican type of government where the counties will have representation as well as the population. In other words, we'll have each county would have more control over what happens within that county.
Absolutely. If using the 20 county model that we're currently on now, we would have one senator per county, and then the assembly, we envision having 60 assembly. So each county would have at least one assembly person, but the rest of it would be done by population. So let's say Sierra County, which only has about 3,200 people, they would have one senator and one assembly. So they would have an individual representing them in each house. So if there was something like Placer County, would take up 20% of the assembly, but they still would only have one senator. So we would get back to that Republican form of government where a bunch of small counties can get together and say, Placer, we don't want that. So back when California had the Republican form of government, we had $5 billion worth of debt. Today, we have over $340 billion worth of recognized debt as of a LAO report of May of 2014.
Now, does that include the unfunded liabilities of CalPERS and that sort of thing?
You start looking at the unfunded liability. Actually, the 340 did include that. They said this was the unfunded liability, but nobody's truly opened the books all the way yet. So who knows how much we're indebted within California. Right now, if Jefferson were to split, we would take 4.59%, which would be the population of 1.7 million people. We would take $15.6 billion of that debt as our fair share. But what we would get out of that is we would get both the colleges, all the community colleges, the prisons, all of the state infrastructure would now belong to Jefferson because we were the tax-paying people at the time when those things were put in, so now that property belongs to us.
I understand in one county, the public employee unions attacked the Jefferson movement and said some things to the prison employees that was not true. Is that what happened there?
That's what happened in Del Norte County back in June of 14. They actually had it on the ballot whether they should go with Jefferson or not. And SEIU came in there with $40,000 and basically told the guards and the unions there that if you pass Jefferson, the next day the prisons will shut down, which is complete and utter nonsense because actually the prisons in Jefferson would be a cash generator because 97% of the people are from the bottom two-thirds of the state.
Okay, so you charge them a fee.
We would actually have an instant business as soon as we became Jefferson because we'd be able to hand a bill to California and say, hey, we're taking care of all your folks here. So it'd be a cash cow and not something that we would shut down.
Now, when you mentioned the 20 counties, does that include Calaveras and Tuolumne County?
Actually, when we have a model, and it's on soj51.net and on the Finances tab, we've actually included Alpine, Calaveras, Amador, and Tuolumne. So there's actually those 4 counties plus 7 in Oregon as well. They're all in the model, and when you pencil it out, we are a very viable state, similar to Idaho. They have 1.6 million people, we have 1.7. The industries are almost identical. They have timber, mining, agriculture, light industrial, and recreation. Northern California has timber, mining, agriculture, light industrial, and leisure. So they run, we run.
I thought of a logo
Oh,
I'd like to share.
all right.
All right, the logo would have four figures. One would be a skier.
Okay,
Another one would be a prospector, gold mining.
of course.
Another one would be a lumberjack or timber. And then the last one would be a fisherman.
There it is.
Now, look at the economic implications of that.
It's fantastic, and the unfortunate thing is today, Northern California runs on 28% of the economy. It used to 20 years ago. So 72% has been taken off the table, and we're still able to operate. So if we can get our industries back and up and running, then we'd be an indomitable force.
I understand that one of the provisions of our Constitution is that the states do have some power. If the federal government does something within the states that's not provided for in the Constitution, there's a feature called nullification. The states, if they have the courage, could say, sorry, you can't do that in our state. And now I know that the present state of California may not have that much courage, but perhaps the new state would.
They really would. We believe that Jefferson, what we call, has a titanium backbone. And when you talk of nullification, it was actually embedded in the Bill of Rights in the 9th and 10th Amendment. So it gave the powers that weren't explicit in the Constitution to the federal government were implicit to the states or to the people. And so by using that, and let me give you an example. Down in New Mexico, there was a county called Otero County, and the Board of Supervisors, they tasked the sheriff to go through, put out an RFP to have the forest managed to the federal management forestry plan. And by doing that, they were able to clear the forest down to 40 trees per acre, which is what they consider a healthy stands forest.
Right.
And they were actually able to start 2 mills, get the income from that. But what they were doing is protecting the town from a catastrophic wildfire.
Right.
So this is based under public health and safety, which the federal government has no jurisdiction over. So the feds did not even come in an attempt to stop this. So you can use the existing laws or the inability for the federal government to come in because they're only supposed to do 4 things: war, peace, international negotiations, and international commerce. So that's what the Constitution is about. It's a contract with 50 member states to do particular items. Outside of that, all jurisdiction belongs to the states.
This is it. You know what's so sad is that our public educational system should be teaching the Constitution. So younger people and older people like me could have a good idea of what government's all about. It's almost like civics has been ignored. And so what's one of the byproducts of this movement, as we see it, and also our taxpayers group, is to have a greater understanding of our rights and responsibilities as citizens and to understand our Constitution and the beauty of it. And there's so much wisdom in our Constitution that simply hasn't been repeated in the last century.
And the Constitution was basically plagiarized from 700 years worth of English law. If anybody really wants to get like a 6-hour primer, go to Chris Ann Hall's website. She's a constitutional attorney, and what she shows will blow your mind because she shows you basically the genealogy of the Constitution, and she takes it step by step. There's only 7 articles, and she runs through those, plus she also runs through the Bill of Rights and where they all came from. And it started back in 1066 and all the way through the 1600s. And there were points in time, everybody's heard of the Magna Carta,
Right.
but that's like the 2nd or 3rd item within the genealogy of the rights that we have, both under natural law and English law. So this is a great primer if you don't want, you need to spend a lot of time on
What is your website?
Chris Ann Hall.
That's C-R...
K-R-I-S-H, Chris Ann, A-N-N-E, Hall.com. So it's K-R-I-S-A-N-N-E, Hall.com. And you can see a lot of her, she basically has a Liberty radio show that comes out of Florida. But if you look on YouTube and stuff like that, you can find her entire genealogy on there, or you can acquire one of her discs. but that would be a core education to combat what they've been teaching our kids for the last few decades.
There's another book that we try to promote, besides the Constitution, we're a taxpayer group. It's called The Law by Bustier, that talks about the basic rights of life, liberty, and property. This was done back in 1850s, and it's just as accurate today. And actually, when you look at, after reading this book, you understand how those three rights link together. You see it in the Constitution, in the Fifth Amendment and the 14th Amendment.
There you go.
Now, the Declaration of Independence did not use the word property, life, liberty, and property. Instead, they used pursuit of happiness. At that time, there was a tremendous upset about the slave trade. And Jefferson and others couldn't allow the founding of our country to be thrown into controversy over slavery. And that's why the pursuit of happiness was used instead of property. Interesting, huh?
Very interesting.
One of the things that we have concerns about is this climate control thing that's going on with the UN Agenda 21 and supposedly global warming. And now they don't call it global warming anymore because it stopped back in the 1990s. So they changed that to climate change. Yeah, but the whole process seems to be about expanding government, change the form of government, because they do not believe that human beings should exist in a free state. They don't like capitalism. They think that capitalism will destroy the planet. Okay, with that kind of a mindset, what they're doing now seems so odd and ridiculous, but they think they're saving the planet.
Yeah, and that's why we consider Jefferson the silver bullet, because we're actually looking to get back to a constitutional republic where all these rules and regulations and Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030 would be set aside. The number of regulations that we would have in Jefferson would be minuscule compared to what they're doing. If you look at California's Constitution over its 165-year history, you have over 522 modifications or amendments to a Constitution that's only been around, about 150 years. So it's 80,000 words, and you've seen our Constitution. It was actually written on one page at one time, and now they have a little booklet that's easier to read, and it's been modified 27 times, 10 of which are the Bill of Rights.
Which are the best part.
Which are the best part. And there was a huge argument back then whether they would put that in there. They thought if they left it out, that it would be inherent that since it wasn't in the Constitution, it belonged to the states. Then there were those who said, we really have to put this in here, otherwise they're going to walk all over us. So they put them in here, and now you can see what they're trying to do as far as modifying and twisting them a little bit over time.
That is very interesting. Now, one of the things, we have a $68 billion bullet train that the state of California is doing. Would the state of Jefferson be involved in that?
Not at all. It was never intended to come to the north counties of the state. And so it would just be the train to nowhere, literally, for us, but we'd no longer be responsible for any of that debt. So we can take that off the table. And all the regulations that go, with CARB and the fire fee, stuff like all those things would be retired. Actually, some of our members are building what they call a skeleton constitution, which takes best of breed of the small states in the Union, like Idaho and Nebraska and the Dakotas, stuff like that, and cobbling together a framework. And so when Jefferson happens, we have something to work from. So some research has been done. And then there's another group that also has to be formed for the Articles of Reconciliation, which is how we divvy up the property and negotiate terms for splitting the state.
I see. This would involve the transfer of state property to the new state.
Correct.
That's within that jurisdiction.
Right, and pretty much everything that goes above the state line, if it's physical, it belongs to Jefferson. If it had the state of on the vehicle, it belongs to Jefferson, because we were tax-paying members when all those things were adjudicated and acquired. They belong to us. Then we have to negotiate what the debt's going to be. We have a roundabout idea. We think it's $15.6 billion. But what the interest rate is, we'd like to see zero. They'd probably like to see 100% per minute. So we'll find something in between there.
one of the concerns older people, not me, but people that are really older.
Much older.
Yes. Is they have retirement systems that they were in public service with the state, and would they lose their retirement if the new state was formed?
No, let me give you a first example, then we'll go a little bit deeper. If you moved to Texas because you didn't want to be taxed anymore by California, CalPERS or CalSTRS would send you your check.
Right.
Okay? If you move to Australia, they send you your check. So that argument's kind of taken off the table. But what you're looking at is for people that are currently in the system, what are we going to do? If you're currently in CalPERS, CalSTRS, then the Jefferson counties or the state of Jefferson would still continue to pay into those systems because states cannot violate contract law according to Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution. So it makes it a very easy argument to dispel. We will continue to pay in. But any new employees that come into the state of Jefferson or into the Jefferson counties, instead of being on their defined benefit plan, would most likely be brought into a defined contribution plan.
Right.
So we could just take the money, give it to the employees as they vest. The money's theirs to do with as they wish.
That is almost exactly what John Coppell with the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association has been saying for years.
It's a much better system, and the liabilities
Yeah.
don't increase over time.
That's cool. Now, does the state name have to be Jefferson? And does the logo have to be exactly like we have there?
Now, let me explain. Everybody says, what are the double X's for? It was created by a high school student back in 1941. What he had actually done is flip the gold pen over and put the Great Seal of the state of Jefferson, and the two X's represent the double cross of Salem and Sacramento against their populations, because Oregon was heavily involved in the 1941 effort. But Jefferson as the state name, as this flag as it exists today, it all be decided at the Constitutional Convention, where peoples from all 20 or 24 counties can come in and discuss how they want it. Do they want North California? Do they want pink bunnies? It doesn't really matter what the name is. Those people will settle on what the name is, what the flag will be, what the state animal will be. All those details will be handled there.
Then we can have a logo with a skier and a gold panner and a lumberjack and a fisherman.
You can propose whatever you like, and if they like that, then we can go with it. I'm actually a big fan of Thomas Jefferson, and if we could, you see this here,
Yeah.
having Thomas Jefferson overlaid on the Declaration of Independence, and then have our state colors, whatever those would be around that. That would be something I would be looking forward to.
Well, that wouldn't be bad.
No.
No, that'd be pretty good.
There
Who's going to want to follow a flag with all these 4 people on it?
Well,
the economic, I didn't want to go too fast here, but the economic considerations of this is incredible. Can you imagine what would happen to the economy if our timber people were allowed to harvest timber and the industry got going again?
Right. I mean, right now the Canadian softwood treaty has recently expired. They have a year to solve it. They have a carrier rider on that. But if we were to fire up our own mills again, and there were billions of dollars lost in timber in Trinity County alone in the fires, and I can imagine what the same amounts in Calaveras, El Dorado the year before, and Amador counties. We've burned those things up. And when you look at the environmental impact of that, that's 1 acre of burned forest is equivalent to 700 cars running for 24 hours a day for a full year. And you know how many acres went up.
Oh, wow.
So that is a huge number. So when they talk about, this has a higher emissions than that, think of what 1 acre of forest going up is worth.
What about the financial stability of the new state?
Great question. A majority of the money goes to the counties. This is kind of an inverse relationship for what they have in California today. So with the 20 or 24 counties that we're looking at, the state would have about a $2.9 billion operating budget. But it's the counties themselves, after they pay for all of their normal expenditures, so basically their budgets, annual budgets, and K through 12 expenses, they would have a $7.5 billion surplus, and that's to operate the cities and take over the functions that the state used to have. So it's a very viable state, and it turns the finances inside out, where the state is not in control, but it's the local governments that are in control. So they can determine how their money is spent. The money was raised there, the money's returned there, and it's used for the benefit of the people. Now, your ability to talk to your state legislator is very small in California. Senators represent 931,000 people plus, and then half of that by assembly. And so when you have representation where you have an assembly individual representing 30,000 people, and then the county being represented by a state senator, the likelihood that you'll run into them in the stores or on the street, be able to speak your mind and get to them in council is very good. And so localized people can tell their localized government the projects and products that are important to them, and from that, that's where they would spend their money. So if say Tahoe says we really want to do all leisure all the time, then they can focus their money there. But if you look at Trinity County, it's going to be all lumber all the time. So every area will concentrate on the industries that best performs for them.
Now, there's a lot of work that needs to be done within the counties to get the county to come on board. And I understand the easiest way would be the Board of Supervisors simply voting on it. But there's other ways too.
There are so many ways. It's kind of like a gift. There really are no rules to Article 4, Section 3 of the Constitution. It says you cannot create a state from another state without the permission of the legislature and Congress. So you're only looking at 4 bodies. You're not looking at a governor's signature, and you're not looking at a president's signature. So it's very easy to get those 2 lines worth to create a state. But at the local level, a county board of supervisors represents the entire population. And so if you can get those 5, or a majority of those 5 individuals to sign a declaration and petition, then that county is quote unquote in. But there are sometimes situations where counties are uncomfortable, but then the people can take up the banner. And what we use as a metric is 50% of +1 of those who voted in the last gubernatorial election. So anybody, any resident within that county can sign a declaration and petition, and then we can carry that forward to Sacramento.
What is your website?
It's soj51.net.
soj51.net. Well, we've learned a lot, and I think we just kind of scratched the surface. We're so delighted you came on our show, and I think we have not seen the last of you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
The Calaveras County Taxpayer Association does these types of programs to bring a higher level of awareness on civic responsibilities, and hopefully so our children and their children can also live in a free and prosperous society. We are so glad that you joined us. See you next time.
It would, yeah, it was on here. Maybe if you rub